Walking simulators, the most critically acclaimed new genre from the teens. The 20s, the years from 2010 to 2019. There's no good name for this decade. They let you experience the perspective of a richly written character or immerse yourself in a meticulously crafted environment. Originally, Walking Simulator was a derisive name. Back in the beginning of the decade, games like Dear Esther and Gone Home got the name because a lot of cranky gamers were annoyed you couldn't beat the game by shooting things? No. It might seem like a silly thing to be worried about these days, but we all too easily forget that back in 2013, it was really hard to find a game where you could shoot a gun. Nevertheless, the name stuck, and a series of popular walking simulators secured a passionate audience. As the decade came to a close, the walking simulator genre exploded with a bounty of games, so much so that it's getting a little hard to determine just what a walking simulator is. But the one thing we do know is that these games all have walking. But what is walking? Walking, for able-bodied humans, is locomotion at a moderate pace made by lifting and setting down each foot in turn, never having both feet off the ground at once. And yes, that is an official rule in the actual real sport of race walking, so I have no choice but to follow it. This is called gait, and it's just one thing we have to check for when ranking the walking in these walking simulators. One of 4 parts of my video game walking authenticity power rankings rubric. Next, walking speed. The CDC puts the average, comfortable walking speed at about 3 to 4 miles per hour. Any faster, and it's a jog. Any slower, you're not moving. Next, I want to know about the extremities. Are they wearing boots, shoes, none shoes? Whatever they're wearing, I'll have to measure what, if any, effect it has on the walking. Also, walking is not merely an activity of the feet. Our whole body moves in important but subtle ways. Our arms jostle rhythmically, and our hips sway from side to side. Walking is a full body sport. Finally, I want to consider the entire walk holistically and ask, does this walk convey a personality? Most walking simulators have a ton of narrative, and if the damn walking ain't telling me something, how else are these games going to communicate with me? It's not like there's anything to shoot. Now that we have a rubric, it's time to move at a reasonable pace to the judging. I'll put my rankings here on the board. I'll award each game up to 5 points in each of the categories of the video game walking authenticity power rankings rubric. And then we'll see which of these games truly simulate walking. First up,
Dear Esther.
The game that kicked off the walking simulator revolution. The first thing we'll evaluate is gait. This game has none, because in Dear Esther, you do not have a body, so there is no foot to firmly place down, one at a time. There are no arms to swing at your side. You may as well be a ghost for how you glide over the haunting, weathered island. Next, walking speed. This required me to conduct some rigorous scientific analysis. In order to calculate speed, I need a set distance I can time myself against. That meant I had to approximate some measurement of distance in-game. Standard front door size is 3 feet wide, so we can extrapolate that this building is 23 feet long. For the test, I timed myself walking the length of the building, repeating the test 3 times so I could average the results together. 5.22 seconds, meaning a speed of 4.4 feet per second, or 3 miles per hour. This ghost moves at walking speed. I'm conflicted. In Dear Esther, you move at the right speed, but every other aspect of the walking experience is compromised. Well, to be fair, there is one other impressive walking feature. This game makes it exceptionally easy to walk straight to the bottom of the ocean.
Hi, Mom. So I got my ticket home from Europe.
Next is Gone Home, the game which arguably brought walking simulators into the mainstream. It also made a lot of people angry, either because of the game's ingenious twist ending, or because the developers had the audacity to make the main character a lesbian. 2013, man. In the gait test, Gone Home also fails for lack of feet, and hands, and only the slightest of head bobs. However, you do get the loud clomp of what I presume are some type of heavy boot. This might be an example of the characters walking reflecting their personality, perhaps implying you share your mother's interest in forestry, or your younger sister's interest in punk music. Or maybe she just picked up some Euro fashions while studying abroad in Amsterdam. The problem is, I can't know for sure what type of boots they are since I'm a non-corporeal ghost. To establish in-game scale, I approximated the double front doors at 5 feet, making this room about 25 feet long. I recorded an average walking speed of 3.9 miles per hour, peppier than Dear Esther, but still within the normal bounds of walking. Despite its accolades, Gone Home's walking is nothing to gone home about.
I don't like the sound of that.
Next up is Firewatch. It has fully voiced, interactive dialogue, a stunning art style by way of Ollie Moss. But the real home run here is that your character exists in 3 dimensions. I haven't been this excited about video game feet since Blizzard announced Sigma. And I can confirm that in Firewatch, your character always has one foot planted firmly on the ground while walking. Your shoes look appropriate for the location, and when they're not interacting with the environment, your arms sway realistically at your side. There's also a nice head bob, which, if you hate immersion, can be turned off. To measure speed, I needed flat ground, which was harder to come by than I expected in Firewatch's gorgeous natural environments. I went up to my fire tower and decided I could use my twin bed as an approximation. At 6.25 feet long, I could make an estimated guess that the room was about 16 feet. My walk times averaged 2.87 seconds for a speed of 3.9 miles per hour. But then I discovered that's not your only speed. In this game, you can jog. This is a walking simulator. What in the world do I need to jog for? Unfortunately, my video game walking authenticity power rankings rubric does not look kindly on jogging. Everybody's gone to the rapture, including you, since you're a ghost. No corporeality here in this picturesque UK village. There's plenty of surreal and compelling narrative devices to be sure, but are you simulating a typical gait as you walk through town? Since I can't see my feet, there's no way to know. Let me see them feet. I am, however, excited by the chance to measure the walking speed in Eggter. The game was infamously criticized for its slow walking speed and seeming lack of a sprint option, though it turned out the developers merely forgot to mention it in the UI. It was easy to miss because the game's sprint had a gradual acceleration. I'm explaining all of this because I want you to understand I will be completely ignoring the sprint function, and that I'm excited to see just how dangerously slow this walking is. Establishing scale in the strange universe of Great Britain was trickier than I expected. First, I tried to use this parking lot, since the standard British parking space is 7.8 feet. My calculations gave me 3.6 miles per hour, which was moderate, perhaps even brisk. And that's when I realized these parking spaces weren't standard sized at all. Something had clearly gone wrong in this town. To correct this error, I decided to use this picnic table, which by all accounts appeared to be the 6-foot variety. That gave me a 24-foot building I could measure against and calculate a walking speed of 3.15 miles per hour. A languid pace, just as I suspected. And while the game was able to immerse me in a faraway fantasy land, I still got the sense that the walking just wasn't front and center. What Remains of Edith Finch breaks the mold by including a series of non-walking vignettes. These moments contain deeply moving, melancholic stories that verge on the sublime. And they are not walking. This was disappointing, but I pressed on in my analysis. Edith Finch continues Firewatch's trend of making the player a corporeal being. Weirdly, I need to give a spoiler warning before I show footage of Edith Finch's feet. Please don't read too much into that statement. If you want to just close your eyes, I'll describe the feet. Here is Edith Finch, walking through a forest. Now looking down at her feet, and we see that one foot appears to stay on the ground as the next foot moves forward. Excellent. Her left arm sways at her side, with her right hand in her pocket, a totally valid way to walk. Okay, you may now open your eyes. Calculating scale in Edith Finch was trickier than I expected. I ended up using this envelope to approximate the size of the floorboards at 6 inches. This allowed me to measure this runner carpet as 15 feet long, which led to an average walking speed of 3.3 miles per hour. A nice, moderate pace. Just how I like it. Still though, the non-walking vignettes bothered me. Towards the end of the game, you play a vignette focused on Lewis, Edith's brother. The game splits the controller in two, with one side controlling his grim job in a fish factory, while the other represents the colorful fantasy world he's created in his mind. A fantasy world where you get to walk. I got through all these vignettes only to walk with half the controller. It's like the game is trying to split my mind in two while I sink into a deep depression about my repetitive dead-end job, just as the bright inviting world of my imagination consumes and eventually endangers my very being. And I know exactly what you're thinking. What does any of that have to do with walking? Nothing.
Lunar Transfer Station, TACOMA.
Ah, TACOMA, the second game from Fulbright, the creators of Gone Home. And like Gone Home, the only puzzle it presents is a story to unravel. You do that on the TACOMA space station by playing back recordings of the station's crew, and what the fuck? You can float? I said you have to keep one foot planted firmly on the ground. Disqualified.
These trails aren't going to take care of themselves.
eShade brought back what a lot of the early walking simulators had stripped out, including quest lines, crafting, and an inventory. There's no violence or combat, so the story is still front and center, and since it's an open world, you do a lot of walking. But the creator of the game said that this is not a walking simulator. And to be fair, I don't know if you're a bear person or a monkey guy, and I have no idea what their average walking speed is. Virginia is an interesting case, incorporating film editing techniques to stop the car, there's a buffalo in the road, which probably means something because this game's surreal, metaphorical story keeps jump cutting from moment to moment, overwhelming the player with too many distractions from what really matters in this genre, which, to reiterate, is the walking. Well, we had more disqualifications than I expected, but that's okay. It's time to tally up our totals and let the video game walking authenticity power rankings rubric do its job. Oh dear, what? Doesn't make any sense. This is so disappointing. None of these games come even close to a high score in the video game walking authenticity power rankings rubric. It just doesn't make any sense. These are walking simulators. They should have aced this test. Maybe what I need to do to check my rubric is try a game that is not a walking simulator, but has lots of walking. A game like Death Stranding. You walk with one foot placed firmly on the ground. Check. You carefully move at an arduously slow pace through the game's deserted environments. Check. Your extremities are clearly visible and move just how they should. Check. And Norman Reedus walks exactly how I'd expect him to walk in a baffling world where he has no idea what the fuck is happening. Check. Sure, Norman Reedus can run and drive and tumble and swim to his own body after he dies, but in the 40+ hour playtime, you can do so much more walking than any of these so-called walking simulators. Could there be something I missed in my rubric? Am I so out of touch? No. It's the games that are wrong. I have to come to terms with the fact that these walking simulators are shitty at walking. Sure, they tell some incredibly earnest stories that other games rarely attempt, and allow you to inhabit and empathize with fully realized characters, and they tweak your curiosity with environmental storytelling that begs you to explore their spaces. So if you want really immersive, truly simulated walking, there's only one place to go. AAA games. Have you seen the gait in Skyrim? Assassin's Creed, you better believe that's a moderate pace between 3 and 4 miles per hour. And Grand Theft Auto, don't get me started. Put one foot down firmly in front of the other.